The power failed at 12:11 a.m., and for the first few seconds, everyone in town assumed it was ordinary. Storm damage, transformer overload, a line fault somewhere out past the highway. Small towns lose power often enough that darkness alone doesn't feel mysterious. Streetlights vanished. Wi-Fi died. House alarms beeped once and fell silent. Refrigerators stopped humming. Neighborhoods that had been quietly lit a second earlier turned into flat blocks of black shape under a moonless sky. That part made sense. What did not make sense was what happened 3 minutes later. Televisions that had gone dead began glowing again. Not all of them, not brightly, but enough to cast faint light through curtains in living rooms, while the rest of each house remained without power. Then the same message appeared on every active screen. Do not go outside. Await further instructions. The message looked like an emergency alert, but not one anyone recognized. There was no station logo, no government seal, no weather banner, county ID, or crawl matching the standard broadcast system. The font was close enough to official to be believable at a glance, but wrong in the details. Spacing too narrow, alignment slightly off, text appearing in blocks rather than the normal alert formatting people were used to seeing. On some screens, the message remained still. On others, it flickered with low static behind it, as though the signal was being forced through equipment not designed to carry it. The strangest part was the power source. These televisions were plugged into dead homes on dark streets during an active town-wide outage, yet the screens glowed cold and steady, while every lamp, outlet, and switch around them remained useless. Battery radios began carrying the same voice within 10 minutes, a low, clear male voice reading instructions in calm, measured sentences. The first lines were simple enough to sound almost reasonable. Stay inside, keep doors secured, avoid windows, preserve battery use. But the longer people listened, the stranger the phrasing became. The broadcast never identified the emergency. It never named the agency speaking. It never explained why no sirens were sounding and no police vehicles were visible on the roads. Instead, it repeated one sentence that stayed with nearly everyone who heard it. If you hear knocking, do not respond. In a blackout, warnings usually clarify danger. This one only shaped it. By doing that, it made the entire town imagine something outside before anyone had actually seen anything at all. At the County Operations Center, backup generators kept a small section of emergency management online, but the staff there had not issued any such message. That was confirmed almost immediately. No alert had been authorized. No emergency text system had been triggered. No local station had been asked to carry civil warnings. Yet dispatchers could hear the same audio playing faintly through radios brought from home by off-duty responders arriving to help. The power grid map showed a genuine outage across most of the county, but the signal map showed something impossible layered across it. A single active broadcast source appeared to be transmitting from somewhere inside the dead zone itself. Whatever was sending the message was operating in the one place the outage should have made transmission hardest, not easiest. Residents began calling emergency services from cell phones while they still had enough battery and intermittent signal to do so. Their reports shared the same basic structure. The town was dark, the roads were empty, the message was real, and in some houses, televisions that should have been dead had turned on by themselves to carry it. What differed were the details around the edges. One family claimed their kitchen radio had powered on without batteries installed. A store owner reported a display TV still playing the message in a fully powerless shop. An elderly couple on the north side of town said the broadcast used the maiden name of a relative no one else should have known when telling them not to answer the back door. Those details were too strange to verify quickly, but together they pushed the event away from infrastructure failure and towards something far more difficult to contain. By 12:38 a.m., police units attempting to patrol the town reported an atmosphere that felt wrong even before any clear incident occurred. The streets were not just dark, They were still. No porch lights, no passing headlights, no people standing outside discussing the blackout the way neighbors usually do. It was as if the entire town had obeyed the same instruction at once and withdrawn behind locked doors. That alone would have been eerie enough, but patrol officers also noted that several houses had visible television glow behind curtains despite the confirmed outage. They knocked on one door to check welfare and received no answer, even though movement was visible inside. Later, the homeowners explained they had heard the knocking and assumed it might be the thing the broadcast warned them about. They had been too afraid to verify it was police. The message repeated 11 minutes with only slight changes between cycles. The first few loops sounded informational. Later ones became more specific. Remain away from exterior doors. Do not allow unknown voices to identify themselves. Do not trust visual confirmation through windows. No ordinary emergency message is written that way. It was guiding behavior against an opponent, but refusing to name what the opponent was. That style made it effective in the worst possible sense. People complied because uncertainty is often more controlling than information. Some listeners later admitted they were already frightened before anything happened outside at all. The broadcast did the work of building the threat long before the threat became visible, if it ever did. A technician at the emergency center isolated part of the signal path and found that the unauthorized transmission was riding across old emergency distribution channels not used in years. The county once maintained a Cold War-era civil defense relay network connected to siren towers, municipal buildings, and legacy broadcast injection points. Most of that system had been abandoned in place rather than fully removed because dismantling it cost more than leaving it dormant. According to the technician, the active signal appeared to be waking pieces of that dead network and using them as if they had never been retired. That discovery explained how the message could reach odd hardware during a blackout. It did not explain what could reanimate the network, power dead devices, or generate a coordinated transmission from infrastructure the county itself no longer controlled. Around 1 a.m., the first direct witness reports of something outside began reaching dispatch. These accounts were inconsistent enough to frustrate investigators later, but similar enough to matter. Someone standing at the end of a driveway where no one had been a moment earlier. A figure seen crossing a road too slowly to be a person in a hurry and too steadily to be mistaken for an animal. A shape visible through frosted glass that disappeared whenever someone looked directly from a different angle. None of these reports proved anything by themselves, but they landed on top of an already primed public imagination. The broadcast had instructed people not to trust what they heard at their doors or saw at their windows. Once the first silhouettes were reported, the warning retroactively felt justified. One deputy in the western part of town made the most troubling radio call of the night. He reported seeing a television through the front window of an abandoned farmhouse outside the main residential grid. The house had been without legal power service for years, yet the screen inside showed the same emergency message as every active home. He approached the porch, confirmed the meter was dead, and called the structure clear through the front room with his flashlight. No one was present. The television, however, remained on until he stepped across the threshold. At that moment, it cut to black and the room fell completely dark. When he backed outside again, the screen relit on its own. That observation pushed the county judge, who had by then joined the emergency center, to request state assistance before dawn. The state utility liaison arrived by remote line first, then in person once road conditions allowed. His initial analysis focused on the outage source rather than the broadcast. He confirmed the blackout itself was real and mechanical, a substation fault followed by cascading line protection failures. But that made the signal worse, not better. The grid conditions should have prevented ordinary residential display devices from operating. Even battery backup couldn't explain some of the reports because several of the devices involved were known not to contain internal power at all. He listened to the broadcast over a copied recording and said something that stayed in the operations notes. Whatever is doing this knows exactly which dead systems can still listen. The county archives provided the next major clue. Buried in civil defense paperwork from the 1970s was a map of the old emergency relay network, including a backup transmitter site outside town near the abandoned quarry road. The site had supposedly been decommissioned decades earlier after new communication systems made it obsolete. Yet the active signal source on the emergency center's diagnostics aligned roughly with that same location. A deputy and utility worker were sent there under escort. They found the concrete structure standing in worse shape than expected, but not fully ruined. The gate was rusted but recently disturbed. Inside, old equipment racks sat dead under dust, except for one cabinet. Dark on desks, chairs remained pushed in, ceiling lights lit the open-plan floor in flat, indifferent rows. Near the back of the suite stood a cluster of newly assigned desk phones, and one of which now carried the number from the voicemail. It sat on a clean workstation with no personal items, no paperwork, and no sign anyone had used it yet. The friend checked the activation settings first. Everything was normal, the number was live, voicemail had not been configured yet. Outbound routing worked, but when he pulled the internal message record from the handset system, there was nothing stored locally. The voicemail that had arrived the night before had passed through the network without ever residing on the phone that now officially owned the number. Then the phone rang. Not loudly, not in some dramatic cinematic burst, just an ordinary ring in a room that should have been empty. All three men looked at it immediately. The display showed no caller ID. The facilities manager refused to touch it. The friend answered on speaker. There was only silence at first, not dead air, the slight living silence of an open line. Then the same voice from the voicemail spoke again. "You answered." The line stayed open long enough for everyone in the room to understand what they were hearing. Then came a final sentence, quiet and precise. "You weren't supposed to be there yet." The line disconnected before any reply could be formed. That second call altered the meaning of the first. The warning had not been abstract, it was literal. Someone or something knew the number would exist tomorrow, knew it would be answered, and knew the answer would happen in a physical place not yet occupied in any ordinary sense. The facilities manager immediately checked the office access logs. No employee badge entries had occurred since the contractors left earlier that day. The suite was otherwise empty. Yet the phone had gone active long enough to place outbound signaling into the network. Somewhere inside the system, the extension was being used or was behaving as if it were. When the company finally moved staff onto the floor, the workstation tied to the number remained intentionally unassigned. The phone was boxed, the port disabled, and the desk left empty. That practical decision should have ended the case. It mostly did. No more voicemails arrived from the future, and no live calls came through that specific line once it was disconnected. Yet the office still produced smaller anomalies: internal call traces from unused ports, brief handset activations after midnight, and one report from a cleaner who heard a desk phone ringing on the dark floor and found no lit extension when she went looking for it. None of those incidents matched the original voicemail in intensity, but they were enough to stop anyone from treating the earlier events as a one-time glitch. What kept